If you're looking at the title of this video, I know I'm getting some good old plots together. Not just any plots though, plots that I could possibly describe one of the most amazing masterpieces that I've ever possibly seen in animation history. Way better than the likes of Toy Story. Way better than the likes of Shrek. Way better than the likes of Despicable Me, Secret Life of Pets, Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Monsters Inc., Cars, and etc. It's called The Bad Guys. Oh yeah. We are taking it into overdrive with this amazing crime team. And I tell you, this team of 5, that includes the likes of a wolf, a snake, a tarantula, a shark, and then of course, with the incredible addition of a supposed hamster. A beautiful little hamster that wants to use these guys right here. All 4 of these guys in a group simply titled The Bad Guys. Oh yeah. I'm not only excited to finally get to talk about this movie after such a while of getting all my work together and as much sleep as possible, because I cannot trust that all the hard work I've been doing is just almost crippling. My back is so numb, I cannot even move properly. But hey, after a few days of rest, it's all it took. I'm all fixed up now, and I'm all ready to go here. So let's do this. The Bad Guys simply is about a group of criminals. Super criminals by any means. Not the typical kind that involves the likes of, well, what we've seen out of various characters over the years, like Syndrome, for instance. Lex Luthor, or Darkseid, or many of the other unique pieces surrounding various superhero genres and all other such films and media that relate to it. It's not just comics, movies, and games, shows, etc. But what we got here is something so much more different that you never know unless you actually watch it. This film has such an incredible rating done by various critics, like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb. Then, of course, a bit of an average box office scoring, not to mention a casting including the likes of Sam Rockwell, Awkwafina, and plenty of others. Not technically the greatest casting that I could have possibly seen, but it does work very well. Almost too well for its own good. But that's just the sheer beauty of it. Better yet, that is only the beginning of what I can possibly dive down into this little iceberg simply titled The Bad Guys. And the whole lore established behind it. Because what I can possibly say about this movie, its plot, its characters, its everything, is that it's all well done. Period. So much more well done than every other animated film I could have ever possibly watched in my whole life. And I went as far to say, right now, that is better than Toy Story. Let me explain. The Bad Guys is simply surrounding 4 various criminals. Wolf, snake, shark, tarantula. And these 4 are in fact known for one thing: crimes. Crimes beyond the likes of the average person could ever possibly put together. They are not just some average bank robber team inside a truck like at the beginning of The Dark Knight. They are not just some snively group of terrorists like in Die Hard. And they are definitely not incredibilized hackers, including the likes of DedSec. They are in fact a team of criminals that go above and beyond everything that we've already seen and possibly established. All the kinds of fictional lore that had ever been pieced together in real life relating to crime that happens in plot lines of various movies, TV shows, video games, etc. are all completely tossed out the window in favor of this. A group of 4 that get into an amazing car, score a lot of money from a bank, being chased around by lots of police cars, of which they managed to narrowly escape, get into a secret hideout filled with so much loot Loot that goes beyond all expectations. I mean, they have a push pop? Wow. Who would have thought that that would have made such valuable loot? A push pop. I mean, let's be real here. Does anybody out there, aside from Snake, ever enjoy push pops so much that you'd be willing to even hurt your own friends just to get a hold of one? To me, that's a serious level of addiction. Addicted to amazing, tasty push pop ice cream that really goes beyond so many levels of incredible addiction cliches that ever come together. So, if you thought that the likes of various films that surround addiction and rehab, blah, 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 if you thought that they were all exciting, well, take a look at Snake here wearing a hat and a shirt, eating a push pop. I mean, could you ever possibly make this stuff up? This really is just the beginning. Because eventually what happens is that they eventually form a plot to gather around at a gala and steal a very, very valuable piece. A piece, of course, that surrounds a crystal. A very expensive, fine-cut gem itself that is going to be presented at a local gala in their area. And of course, they want it to be their greatest mission ever. They practically go in utilizing every single amount of spy cliches that we could ever possibly get. James Bond, Mission Impossible, and so much more. Elements from each of these franchises that we have always known and loved that have to do with spy work, covert operations, stealth, etc., all boil down to an incredible scene compiled of various cliches and famous shots that were organized from various films of this exact genre. All in the favor of attempting to successfully steal a priceless artifact. This is basically when a surprise fifth challenger comes by. The fifth bad guy himself, Piranha. Yeah, so if you thought that the likes of what we've seen from a wolf, snake, shark, tarantula were exceptionally well put together, well, take a look at the fifth bad guy himself, Piranha. So, that's 5 total. And of course, this is basically where we get to see the hamster for the first time. And what we see out of Hamster is unlike anything we've ever seen. A guy who wants to take all 5 of these undeniably bad criminals and change them for the better. Because of course what happens is unbelievable. An embarrassing attempt to retreat after successfully grabbing the artifact that they were looking for. Their clothes pop off. Thankfully, not in the way you think of it. Their grappling gun apparently is strong enough to pull all of their outfits apart. Wow. Like, that goes beyond any expectation when you expect a failure to happen live or in any kind of movie or other such media. A grappling gun pulls off their clothes. The way I see it, the logic on that doesn't really make much sense. But in a way to create an impressive, hilarious twist, I'd say they pulled it off very, very well. You could never make this stuff up, guys. I am talking about the greatest piece ever, and I just mentioned that there's a hilarious twist that happens. But of course, it's not really much of a plot twist. All it does is it simply gives us the exact opposite of what we were expecting. Expecting to escape through the roof of a glass skyline with a grappling hook. All the guys are all grabbed on, ready to rumble with the very thing that they wanted most in their hands. But they failed to do so. An embarrassing defeat for the 5. They're all placed in an armored van, ready to be taken away to custody, possibly for life. That is, of course, until the mayor herself, a female fox, steps in and basically talks with the wolf, telling him about the unique feeling of how she apparently trusted him Because after all, they could not just go in with their typical identities. They had to don disguises. Again, elements of various spy work that had to be taken from other films and franchises that were all pieced together here and there, here and where and there, and you get it by now, right? So as they're being ready to haul them away, the hamster comes up with the supposed brilliant idea that the mayor herself, Mayor Foxington, approves. A chance for redemption. A redemption arc that we would have never seen coming. That is until the mayor herself acknowledges that the hamster has a bright idea and the fact that the bad guys were so bad that they had to be stripped away even without redemption. Because even if they were to be redeemed, they could go back to their usual ways. There's always the chance of that stuff happening, even in real life. There's really no redemption in some people at all. There just isn't, no matter what you do. And I'm more than sure that even with a lobotomy, they would still go back to their old ways. There's a good chance of that happening. A very good chance. But they actually go through with it. So here we are. We got 5 bad guys. Yeah. Because Piranha is still part of the team after all. They all go together. The hamster's home, where he basically has himself a meteorite piece. A piece of meteorite that basically impacted the city and is actually responsible for providing the current power source, which is basically meteorite power. If I ever have to find a meteorite out there, I am going to find out myself if it's really capable of giving us power. This could basically be the next alternative to all the oil, coal, water, solar power, etc. The next alternative. And I'm sure to willfully bet that it could actually work. Very willfully. So, anyways, what happens here is that basically certain odd jobs and all other such stuff that basically take place, with all 5 of the members going so far as to go through various steps to ensure that they actually do go through a redemption in their own right. But, of course, there is also this impressive scene where they all dress up in onesies. Now, that's funny. Like, who would have thought that that would have been a good idea? Well, actually, the purpose is specifically to allow for the bad guys themselves to infiltrate a factory that is supposedly using hamsters against their own will. Like some sort of hamster slave camp or even a farm of some sorts. But the real thing is that, well, the hamster himself basically wanted all these hamsters for himself. And I'll get to that part a little later, but anyways, they complete the mission and Wolf himself gets captured on camera, supposedly saving a cat from a tree. A classic act of redemption itself. A classic act of saving the life of a pretty little animal, and a little kitty basically is the right call for that. The fact that he actually goes viral for this is one thing, but Wolf himself still feels a bit insecure about the whole entire thing. He really did want to use his own tactics, his own stealth work, his own skills, along with all 4 of his friends. But unfortunately, the likes of everybody else, they just don't necessarily agree with him fully. But of course, all 5 of them still go through everything they possibly need to do in order to fully redeem themselves. And then of course, there's the one famous part where Mayor Foxington herself basically gets out and goes to the hamster's mansion to meet up with the bad guys themselves. She gets to talk with Wolf for a little while, and they eventually spark a little sort of thing together. Kind of like a relationship, if you will. But overall, I will say, the movie itself is just that enjoyable. But here comes the real deal, the one that you're really looking for. We have ourselves our first major twist. Basically, the bad guys themselves, all 5 of them supposedly being redeemed, are invited to another gala which centers on the utilization of the meteor being used. They organize a plan to steal it, use it for themselves. But what actually happens in this situation is that even though they plan for the whole entire thing, even though they make it as elaborate as possible, yet very secretive, because if word ever got out about any of that, they would definitely go away for good. Going back to their old ways after a redemption program basically went through rehabilitation, whatever you want to call it, would have been a horrible thing to do. Going back to your old ways after everything that you could ever possibly do with your life, it's just not a good thing. It's not okay. It's not good. It's not fantastic. It's not amazing. It's not cool. It's not anything. But of course, it all goes down to basically a little concert that they organize as a form of distraction. Because it's a bit of an elaborate process, very tricky to try and get the info necessary to correctly obtain the treasure they're looking for. At the end, though, they plan to organize a message that would play out loud over the speaker systems. But guess what? It actually disappears. The meteor literally disappears from this pedestal that it was displayed on. And then, of course, with all that had basically happened, the message plays out loud and supposedly informs everybody that the bad guys are responsible. They try to steal a priceless piece that was being auctioned off. They cut off the power and were ready to do what they would do. Or at least they tried to do it. Because what happens is that the power goes off on its own and the artifact that they were basically looking to steal is missing. And the meteor itself is also gone too. So, when you really think about it, you'd think that the bad guys would have learned their lesson. A redemption arc really is a handy piece at allowing certain people that we really don't care for to become people that we would like to care for from this point on. Kind of like in Dragon Ball Z, where Vegeta goes from being a complete jerk, trying to destroy the planet Earth, to eventually teaming up with the Z Fighters, obtaining the Dragon Balls, attempting to get a good wish that would allow him to help make the fight easier, and also to help destroy the Tyrant Frieza. Not to mention many other redemption arcs that I remember the most, but in this exact case, the bad guys in their own redemption arc supposedly had failed, so what do you think happens? They get sent off to a prison island, far away. Well, when they get there, this one twist alone is undeniably amazing. The hamster is actually responsible for this. He basically framed the bad guys in an attempt to try and get them sent away so he could do it himself. That is awesome. That is just a mind blow beyond all belief. All things considered. Then of course the bad guys are sent away to the prison island. But as soon as they're getting ready to be thrown in their cells, a mysterious figure pops up. A figure that was basically taught supposedly in legend. Basically, a warrior known as the Crimson Paw, who's basically in the same prison as the bad guys are. The Crimson Paw fights off the guards and actually reveals themselves. It turns out it is in fact the mayor herself, Diane Foxington, in disguise. So that alone, I mean, a twist happening right after a twist. I've never seen that happen before. Wow. This already broke a lot of ground in here. Like, this is just unbelievable right here. So, of course, that alone is almost like a double twist. So, but because it all technically happened in less than 10 minutes, it's just going to count as one major twist. So, of course, it's revealed that the hamster is responsible for all this, and the Crimson Paw's real identity is Diane Foxington. So, two amazing pieces all put together into one. So, it's one major plot twist alone. Two big things that happen in the film that are a mind blow to watch. Like, I could play that back on loop hundreds of times and I would not be tired of it. So anyways, Diane Foxington herself allows for the bad guys to escape, but while Wolf might be willing to join up, the others do not feel the need to do so with any of the stuff they ever would do ever again. Because they feel that the life that they had before they got arrested for what they tried to do at this one meetup where the crystal was going up, they thought that their lives were good up until the point where their redemption program went down. So they thought that being redeemed was not necessary and they would like to go back to their regular lives, and they would try to make their way back to their old hideout. So of course, that's just what that is. And while Wolf agrees to go with Foxington to go out to her own secret hideout, which in and of itself is crazy. She lives in an ordinary house like some of us do. But it has its own secret basement. A basement that's hidden well below ground and contains lots of awesome gadgets and other cool stuff out there that most superheroes would keep on hold. If you thought the Batcave was amazing, well, take a look at this. The Bad Guy sure is an amazing movie as it is. Again. But of course, it's time to discuss another big thing that happens. The journey to fight back against the hamster himself and restore peace to the world. The city that they once knew was no longer going to have power because the meteor's power was being drawn out to allow for hypnosis, mind control, all things considered. The way to take control of all the hamsters that were reclaimed from the lab that the bad guys themselves infiltrated and were able to escape with. All the hamsters that they basically liberated are now being used for mind control and hypnosis and to basically cause destruction and havoc throughout the city. That alone is just the basic gist of why you should never trust somebody that you hardly have any knowledge of. It's pretty much to be expected though, because what eventually happens is that after some dueling takes place, after some disagreements here and there between the characters, and even the fact that Snake himself actually joins up with the enemy, they manage to shut down the operation. They manage to reclaim their own car. They manage to get a hold of the meteor itself. They managed to shut down the hamster's own plans and pretty much put him on hold until the police would arrive. Unfortunately, in doing so, their car ends up running into the same crater that the meteor itself had created when it first landed. And so, this is basically where we get to see a complete reconciliation between Wolf and Snake. And as for the others, well, they're all prepared to die together. That is, until they are saved. Yeah, they are saved. And eventually, they make it back to safety. And this is where we get to learn of something incredible to begin with. What I have to say specifically is that they actually reveal to the hamster himself that the meteor was in fact swapped with a replica. So, oh my gosh, the old switcheroo technique is at it again with this movie, and I cannot stress it enough that plot twists like this, major plot twists or not, it's still incredible to see. They literally tricked the hamster himself into thinking that they were chasing the real one when there was a fake one attached to the car. The whole time! A fake one! Man. That is just incredible. I am so in joy right now that I cannot possibly go any further with this. But you know what? I better should. Because here's where the real excitement goes down to. The real reason that this movie is overall the best of all in general when it comes to animated films. A third major plot twist. Yeah. A third! Who would have thought that a third would ever make it into a feature film? I've never seen 3 major plot twists all at once. And guess what it's about? It's about Snake himself. How he supposedly betrayed the bad guys and went along to work with the hamster when he actually did not. He literally was convinced to do good again, because even though he had full-on disagreements with things, he still agreed to help make sure the operation would go smoothly. And how do you think that happened? Well, the one thing that he was obsessed with the whole entire time. A push pop. That's right. One last push pop was sitting inside the freezer of their old hideout. And that was enough motivation that he needed to remember his friends. They needed him because his skills were just undeniable. They needed him. His elements, his skills, his intellect, his attitude, his everything. They needed him for all that stuff. And the push pop was the key to allowing him to simply come back to their hands, to their open arms. They were more than willing to allow him to help out, but instead they thought that he betrayed them and worked with the hamster the whole entire time. But oh man, were they wrong the whole time. He basically made them think that he betrayed them and went to work alongside the hamster, only to eventually piece it all together and allow the hamster to be caught and simply detained, taken away, and eventually allow the plot itself to be revealed to the police themselves that the bad guys really were not responsible for this so-called heist. Like, wow. A third plot twist. Like, really. First, it's the twist that involves the classic setup act, where the bad guys are being taken away for something that they did not actually do. The hamster is revealed to be the actual villain, but the rest of the world doesn't know yet. And of course, Diane Foxington is revealed to be the Crimson Paw, the so-called warrior of legend that have been talked about multiple times. And then there's the second major plot twist. The bad guys were in fact responsible for creating an old switcheroo. A fake meteor is strapped onto the car, and the real one is kept safely locked up. So, Snake basically uses the real meteor in an effort to help bring down Hamster and his own operation for good. And while the bad guys are simply taken into custody, they get to do so only because they had done some bad things. But the real threat of the day was at least taken for good. So of course, the bad guys are going to serve some time. And of course, with Diane Foxington supposedly being the Crimson Paw, who even knows what will happen next? And you know what? A good movie deserves a good score. But no, this is not a good movie at all. The Bad Guys 2022 is absolutely, astonishingly, understandably perfect. And I mean it. It deserves an absolute 10.1. Just like that. The best animated film that they ever possibly made. DreamWorks really has a lot of work under their belt. They were amazing for making Shrek films, then How to Train Your Dragon films. But here, in a new decade, they have the opportunity to give us a line of sequels associated with the greatest ever film ever made in the history of animation. There can never be any doubt in my mind, and I'm sure that other people will have at least some degree of agreement with this. Incredibly honest, incredibly accurate, and incredibly willing to talk about anything. And I have found the perfect specimen. This officially receives a score that is higher than The Suicide Squad 2021. This officially has a higher score than the likes of every other film I've ever talked about. Period. No possible exaggerations here. No possible high or low expectations of mine. No possible way to ever call this a bad movie. There's nothing bad about this in general. It is flawless. I am not joking here, guys. This is the perfect movie. The Godfather, Citizen Kane, Saving Private Ryan. They all got nothing on this. This needs to be at the top helm of the National Film Registry. It has to be culturally significant. Way more so than any other movie ever made in American or even worldwide history. There could never, ever be any doubt in my mind on this or anything else ever related to movies or maybe anything else. It's just perfect. There's nothing else that could ever come close to this. But yet, maybe there is going to be something down the line that I will have to talk about some other time. But hey, for 2022, I just knew that movies were going to be good again, in theaters or otherwise. This is one of them. One good movie. Great, absolutely stunning, perfect, interesting, etc. Nothing could ever possibly come close to this. I gave it the best score I could possibly give it. The KFN original scoring, KFN official scoring, or however you would label it in your mind, basically it goes up to maximum with this. And I tell you, no other film could come close. Nothing. Toy Story is out of its element at this point. The Suicide Squad's out of its element. And then, of course, with all the other films that I have given a scoring between 9.0 and 10.0, nothing could ever top this. 10.1, guys. It's a masterpiece. It's perfect. Case closed. The end. Have a nice day. Until next time, that is.